Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis. This is our weekly show where we bring you all the latest updates from the world's most volatile region. Well, Iran has a new president. Hardliner Ebrahim Raisi is now number 2 in the country, a trusted lieutenant to the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Raisi's presidency marks crucial times for Tehran. Renewal of nuclear talks and the frailing economy means that Iran now stands at historic crossroads. What Raisi chooses as priorities will soon shape the future of Iran and all West Asia.
When countries elect a new president, nations across the world congratulate them. When Iran got its new president, the United States too had a gift for them. They hacked several Iranian websites. 33 websites run by Iran-linked media had just one message reflecting on their site. This website has been seized. The US Justice Department says that they were engaging in disinformation campaigns. Iran instead accused the US of muffling press freedom, calling it a move that was not constructive, especially at this key point of nuclear talks. The seizure was a unilateral action, just like leaving the nuclear deal was. But why is the US sending a message to Iran now? It comes at a time when Iran and world powers are expected to start a new round of talks in Vienna. Many believe this could be the final round, a last-ditch effort to restore the historic nuclear deal. For Iran, the seizures don't mean much. Iranian websites could just shift to different domains, or even worse, tighten their internet restrictions. So what is America's endgame here? Is it a message to the country's new hardliner president, Ebrahim Raisi? In Iran, there is no one above the supreme leader. But having a like-minded president in his flank always helps. At 82, Ayatollah Khamenei is dealing with health issues. And soon, he will need a successor. Who better than the president he nurtured and trained? But till then, Raisi and Iran find themselves at crossroads. The hardliner is taking office at a time when discontent is running high in the country. The economy is tanking. The sanctions are crippling, and even loyal supporters are looking for reforms. Raisi's rise is unlikely to alter Iran's negotiating stance. After all, Khamenei has all the say in foreign policy. But having his candidate in office while it is done boosts chances for the hardliners in Iran. Raisi himself is not against the nuclear deal, but he, along with all of Iran, wants the US to lift sanctions first.
My serious suggestion to the US is for them to swiftly fulfill their agreements. They must lift all sanctions and with it show that they are truthful. The people of Iran don't have a good memory of the JCPOA because the grand benefits thought up in the JCPOA never materialized for them. The reason for this was the US breaking their oath and the Europeans not fulfilling their commitments.
For now, Iran's president has a few choices. He could prioritize the economy, make political reforms, and boost the regime's stature in the eyes of Iranians. But this would be at the cost of Iran's regional adventures. It would require taking on the influential military. And given Raisi's loyalty to the regime, it is a very unlikely scenario.
Any negotiations that guarantee national interests will certainly be supported. But we will not tie our people's livelihood to it, and we will not allow negotiations for negotiation's sake.
The other thing he could do is just maintain status quo, double down on his hardline views, utilize the vacuum left by the US in West Asia, and further expand Iranian influence by empowering armed sectarian militias. This is more likely given the new president's speeches. It is possible that Raisi will continue to do what the regime wants him to do. His presidency is a break from the pro-reform Hassan Rouhani and Jawad Zarif government. What the new president does will soon shape the future of Iran and the whole of West Asia with it. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Like always, we will continue to bring you all the latest updates from the heart of the conflict. Don't go anywhere, we have a lot more lined up for today's episode. But first, as usual, let's take a look at what else is making the headlines across West Asia.
Two officials accused of helping Jordan's Prince Hamza try to overthrow his half-brother, King Abdullah II, have pleaded not guilty. Prince Hamza himself is not facing charges, with the Hashemite royal family handling the matter privately. Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has said that the talks with UN's Middle East peace envoy Tor Wensland went poorly, amid attempts to bolster an already fragile ceasefire with Israel in Gaza City. Saudi Foreign Minister has said that Yemen's Houthi rebels have rejected the proposed peace initiative. This comes as the battle for the last government bastion Marib flares in the war-torn nation. Nizar Banat, a harsh critic of the Palestinian Authority, died after Palestinian security forces arrested him and beat him with an iron rod. Hundreds took to the streets in protest after word spread of his death. Scientists have discovered a previously unknown kind of early human after studying pieces of fossilized bone dug up in a site used by a cement plant in central Israel. The parts of a lower jaw and a skull were about 130,000 years old and could be the remains of an ancestor of the Neanderthals.
After 10 years of war and winning a record fourth term in office, Bashar al-Assad's isolation is finally over. His days of ostracization are ending. Gulf states are warming up with the leader, and it looks like Syria is ready to be friends with the Arab world. But what suddenly changed the minds of Arab states?
They say in politics there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests. Until a few years ago, Bashar al-Assad was everyone's favorite enemy. The Arab world wanted nothing to do with him. Since the start of the Syrian civil war, Assad has been ostracized by his neighbors. They sever ties with the Syrian president. Many even back the rebels fighting against him. But unlike regimes that fell like dominoes, Assad emerged as the last man standing. Last month, he had a smile on his face as he cast his vote during the presidential elections. His win was no surprise to both Syrians and countries across the globe. But for Bashar al-Assad, it was a new mandate, one that has given his presidency a new lease of life. The isolation is over for the Syrian leader. He seems to have been completely rehabilitated. The UAE and Egypt consolidated ties with Syria. UAE even unlocked the doors to its embassy in Damascus. For Saudi Arabia, the key is to lure Assad away from Iran. The political mood in the House of Saud is favorable. It is slowly reflecting in Riyadh's policies as well. The corridors of power in Damascus are a new avenue, one that it could use for shoring up its regional interests. A common cause seems to be taking on the Muslim Brotherhood. The Saudis and the Emiratis want to pay for Syria's reconstruction. In return, they want intelligence cooperation with Syria. using its security apparatus to bulk its regional power. The move kills two birds with one stone. It can contain the rise of domestic political Islamists, plus the finances can be used as leverage, keeping Damascus away from the clutches of Tehran. US and Europe are urging Gulf states to not normalize ties. But their reluctance to not engage has left the field open for countries like Russia. Assad's all-weather friend Putin seems to be pushing for friendly ties, slowly shaping Syria's post-war contours. With the growing relations with the Arab world, it could only be a matter of time before Damascus returns to the Arab League. But sources suggest its Iranian ties are likely to stay. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Lebanon is reeling from one crisis after the other. The country is running out of foreign currency and with it fuel, electricity, medicine, and now the country has raised the price of subsidized bread for the 5th time in 1 year. As Lebanon's multiple crises continue to worsen with no resolution in sight, we bring you this report from the heart of Lebanon.
In the pandemic era, the world is working from home. But in Lebanon, it is work from car. Stuck in a queue of cars waiting for fuel, this game designer works the phone to make the most of this long hold-up.
Lebanon is pushing us to the limits. He's experiencing us and throwing all challenges at us.
Shortages have forced motorists to wait for hours, sometimes for less than a quarter of a tank of fuel. Cars line up in the capital and cities across Lebanon, often waiting at stations before they open. For some, it is a daily quest with everything at stake.
Every day the same story. If there is fuel, we go to work. If there's no fuel, we stay at home. We wait for the gas station's owners to show empathy and let us fill our tanks.
Lebanon is currently in freefall. It is on the verge of national bankruptcy. The country is running out of fuel. Bread prices are rising. And the army needs funds to feed its soldiers. It is Lebanon's worst economic crisis in modern history, posing the biggest threat to its stability since the civil war. The currency has lost 90% of its value. Foreign currency reserves have dropped dangerously low. Earlier this week, it raised the price of subsidized bread, a 5th price hike in a year. The latest is attributed to the ending of sugar subsidies, which in turn adds to the cost of bread production. It comes as thousands of citizens depend on subsidies. Most Lebanese have seen their purchasing power drop and their savings evaporate in months. More than half of the country now lives below the poverty line.
I'm saving a lot on everything, but without them, what would I have done on my own? Tell me, what should I do? Even if you want to beg, no one will give you anything because we're all poor. Seriously, we're all poor. What should we do?
The latest victim of this crisis is the Lebanese army. The Lebanese have always considered their military as an anchor for stability in the West Asian nation, one of the only institutions standing above its divisions. But the army is now threatened by this crisis. There is unprecedented pressure on operational abilities. Salaries of soldiers have been wiped out, and overall morale is at an all-time low.
We have to resort to asking friendly countries for aid, but I'll go to the end of the world to get aid so that the army remains standing on its feet.
The military itself raised the alarm for aid, an unusual phenomenon for this force that largely remains outside politics in Lebanon. Before the crisis, a soldier earned around $800 a month, but that has now dropped to less than $100 per month. World powers have now pledged support, but it will be directly given to the army. In international efforts led by France, countries promise to help it navigate this crisis. A financial meltdown, collapse of the Lebanese pound, sky-high prices for basic goods, and anger on the streets. Lebanon is being hammered by one crisis after another, and it looks like there is no end in sight. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Pride Month is being celebrated across the world, but in West Asia, pride is synonymous to persecution. The LGBTQ community continues to be targeted again and again. Conversion therapy is raging across countries, and in some, it is a crime to be queer. So this Pride Month, in our special report, we ask, what is it like to be queer in West Asia?
West Asia has seen many flags over centuries. Arab flags, ISIS flags, Houthi flags, and the list just goes on. Each regime comes with its own flag. But one flag that has rarely been unfurled here is the rainbow one.
People no longer look at us as different or original, but as traitors to the nation, as terrorists.
LGBTQ rights are a slippery slope in West Asia. Sex between men is illegal in 9 of the 18 countries. It is punishable by death in 6 nations. In many Arab nations, homosexuality is not strictly illegal. But the LGBTQ community are often abused. Police often persecute citizens using other laws, such as those covering public indecency. Jordan, Bahrain and Iraq are the only Arab countries where homosexuality is legal by law. But stigma in society continues to persist. Sometimes they even lead to vigilante executions. For years, LGBTQ citizens facing persecution have often found refuge in Istanbul. But today, in the face of growing government hostility and comments from Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, all the community wants to do is leave.
We have seen this so many times in Turkey that hate speech encourages hate crimes. So instead of protecting the rights of a very vulnerable group in Turkey, the government is doing just the opposite. By attacking them, they're creating an atmosphere in which hate crimes towards LGBTI plus people become, in a way, more possible.
Homosexuality is not illegal in Turkey, but homophobia is widespread across the country. Attacks on the LGBTQ community have tarnished Turkey's image as a haven of tolerance, especially in the socially conservative Muslim world. After a 2014 Pride March drew nearly 100,000 people, the government responded by banning future events. Their reason? Security concerns in the city. Across the sea, in Israel, Pride marches are a celebration in themselves. It is one of the very few countries in West Asia where same-sex activity is legal. Since 2002, Israel has been celebrating Pride Month, often against the backdrop of protests from ultra-Orthodox Jews.
For me, it is very important because I was born and grew up here in Jerusalem and spent my entire life here in an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood and with an ultra-Orthodox family. The fact that there's a Pride March here and a relatively large one every year in Jerusalem is very important.
But for others in the community in West Asia, growing up queer isn't so liberating. Despite increased global scrutiny, conversion therapy remains legal in the Arab world, and the LGBTQ citizens are often nudged to take it up, especially through social media. Following its ban on content promoting conversion therapy, Facebook took action against conversion promoters. But these websites were mostly in English. the Arabic language conversion content still thrives. Practitioners post every day to millions of followers. These posts are through verified accounts. They not only promote conversion therapy, but also advocate for it to feel normal. For many across the world, the Pride Month is a celebration of equality, a celebration of acceptance, a celebration of how far the community has come. But in West Asia, pride is often synonymous with persecution. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
This is a story like no other. Imagine going out to fish one day and ending up with more than $1.5 million. Unimaginable? That's what we thought too. But for Abdul Hakim and his friends, this is an incident that changed their lives forever. Let's take a look.
For Faris Abdul Hakim, it was just any other day. He and his friends headed out to sea, trying to earn a living in war-torn Yemen. But it was a day the fishermen will never forget. They hit a jackpot of over $1 million. That too in the belly of a whale. They stumbled upon the carcass of a sperm whale, which was floating kilometers off the coast of Aden. They dragged the dead animal back to shore, but the fishermen struck gold as soon as it was sliced open.
I head out to sea every day in search of my daily catch. And one of those days, we found a dead whale. It turned out to be a whale full of ambergris.
In its belly was a rare substance called ambergris. It forms in the whale's digestive system. The waxy substance is used to make perfume, as it stabilizes the scent. While many know it can be found in sperm whales, coming across it is extremely rare. For the 35 fishermen who found the whale, their lives were transformed forever. The 127-kilogram lump was sold to an Emirati businessman for a whopping $1.5 million. An unimaginable sum for those living in one of the world's poorest countries. Some of the money was used to help those in need, while the rest was split up among the group of fishermen.
Many people made a good use of it. There are those who bought boats, others built or fixed their houses. I built my house, I built my future. The circumstances here are already difficult.
While many would just live off that money for their entire lives, for Abdul Hakim and his friends, it is back to the sea. The love for the sea runs in their veins. As a popular saying in Yemen goes, the sea is a better neighbor to you than a king. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay home and stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis, and you're watching WION. World is One.